Hi everyone, it's Toby from Toby's Urbansketch. Thank you for joining me. Today I want to show you what looks like a complicated scene, but when we break it down and take some simple shapes and a few little measurements and sense checks, and also just letting ourselves get away with a few mistakes, it turns into a really simple but interesting image, which still looks complicated but was really not that hard to put together. Of course, splashing on some lovely colour, thinking about getting a bit of light pooling here and a bit of shadow and shape over there. And before you know it, we got something really fun. I'm also playing around with a fude pen, and for those who don't know, a fude pen is a sort of fine liner with a firm brush nib, which lets you use both fine liner-like qualities, but also get a little bit more variation, tone and shape to your lines. If you want to see how that experiment goes, then of course, watch on. Today, having a little play with these fude pens, fude and fude pens, by Tombow. So what they are, they've got a brush nib on them, if I just show you, but it's quite a fine and hard soft nib, particularly this blue coloured one, which is actually black ink, but it's got a hard soft nib on, hard brush nib on. So I'm going to see how this impacts my sketching. I'm hoping it will give me a little bit more flexibility, but still maintain that lovely crisp quality you get with a fine liner. And we've got a fun scene again from St Neots. So let's just go for it and see what happens. Now this is quite I'm going to call it complicated to pick out the details in this scene. So I'm going to start somewhere in the middle so I can set myself a nice perspective or a nice measurement to base everything on. And I want it to be quite small in the middle here. And we'll get our lovely church in. As ever, just keeping things really nice and loose and joined up. And this is the kind of mark that you can get out of the fude pen. You see, just these bold marks without having to break the sort of continuous line fill, which is great. I'm just trying to capture these various shapes. So it is complicated, right? But if you start with measuring something that you know, so I've got this distant house, and I've used that side to then measure the church against to then bring in the next houses. And the other thing I've got to be really careful about is when you are doing a scene which has a very sort of tunnel vision look, let's say, it's really easy to perhaps overemphasize certain dimensions. So for example here, the next house is actually like this, it's really close, but it's very easy to sort of broaden this out, so suddenly the houses are really wide. So the next house along is still super narrow actually if you measure it. And then the roof comes up at quite an angle, comes up here. And I sort of missed out a chimney there, but we can always just pop that kind of thing on the wrong side, and it still keeps the general sort of aesthetic, doesn't it? Doesn't matter that we got it a little bit wrong. You'll notice if you look closely, or if you're being sharp-eyed, that this chimney I also got wrong, and I fiddled around with it a bit just to make it feel right. But I think this roof actually should have, quote unquote, should have been higher. And this is where we just need to be kind to ourselves. I'm not going to start again just because I got this roof a bit low. So instead, we just fiddle around with this chimney until it feels it's about right. And that's why I love this loose style. You're never too attached to something. You're able to just let yourself explore the image, make it what you want it to be, but also, you know, you're not beholden to it. Just going to try and capture these walls as well, and then actually have managed to get them to match up with this next house on the right, which is kind of our bookend of the street, isn't it, on the right hand side. So we've made it. all the way down with only the one mistake I had to own up to. I like getting these sort of continuous line feels to windows and joining things up. And then let's just see what we can do with this fude pen. Can we just immediately get some shadow? And you can, look at that lovely little sort of immediate shape just from having those bold extra lines. And then capture this window, and there's no window there, we come across, there's another. Let's just keep going with those fun shapes from the fude pen as well. There we go. I keep forgetting about it because it's a bit of a new toy. But I want to just see, you know, I don't know if it's going to replace my normal fine liners, but it's really nice to have the opportunity to play with something new, isn't it? And just going to get the rest of these shapes. I did start talking about shapes earlier and how this is all just shapes. So as you're breaking things down, just you've got lines, you've got parallelograms, you've got rectangles, but it really is shapes, and then you're looking at where do those shapes intersect. So this triangle, which is the roof, where does this other roof intersect it? So as long as you know it intersects there and there, you go out and that's fine, and then you can look at where this roof intersects that one, which is sort of somewhere in the middle, and you just use all these comparative measurements just to keep your sketch about right, to keep yourself happy with the level of detail. And then let's pop in this lovely telephone pole. So it's really tall, isn't it? It needs to be the highest thing by quite some way. So if we pop it up to here and then bring it down and just give it a little bit of shape, and then that has worked out all right. So the key about it is where's the top and where's the foot. The foot's sort of got to match correctly for you to have placed it in the correct perspective. So the foot here, I measured off the base of this wall, which is where it's next to in the image, and then just thought where's a sort of nice place where it looks like it's in the middle. So if I draw some little lines of perspective in there, you've got the pavement going like that and the curb going like that, and you see how suddenly this is in about the right place. But I'll pop some proper pavement lines in later. Now we've got I started on this side because I think it's a little bit easier. So we've got this fun selection of shapes here where we can really put that idea of measuring into practice. So we've got this triangle, and literally the front of this house you can see quite a lot of. I'm just going to try and place the bases of these houses because that also gives us something to measure against. And then we just got to have a look at where's the next triangle, where does it intersect, where's the chimney going, and then where's the next one, and how high does it go, because each of them is going to be higher than the one before because of our perspective. We're looking from here, looking towards them, so things which are closer to us will be taller if they're the same height in reality, if that makes sense. And then just trying to not capturing every little line, are we? We're just trying to make sense, enough sense of what's going on that we can be happy we've captured our image. This is a fun sort of chimney which is poking right up. And then we've got another house here, so it's all just collecting shapes. Chimney here, and I'm bound to have made a mistake, probably one I haven't even noticed yet, but that is okay by me as long as I'm capturing the right feel and getting things so that I feel like this scene represents what I want it to represent. I'm just going to pop this sign in because I think it's a useful both measuring point, but also, to be honest, it's a nice way of hiding some details I don't want to work out. And then we got this. You can see this is an error where I decided to draw the whole triangle. It doesn't matter because we can just cover it up, and then this will end up sort of ghosting out behind all our other lines. When I say ghosting, I mean it's sort of it will look like we're suggesting this building is behind it, which of course the building is behind it, but we didn't have to draw the whole thing in. And it's quite a neat way of purposely doing things, but also if you have made a mistake like I did, it's a nice way of it just not really mattering, because this sort of idea of ghosting, of drawing something behind something else, can really look quite interesting and effective. It makes the scene look busy, but it gets across the complexity. I think that's what I'm trying to say. It gets across the complexity without you necessarily having to draw something hugely complex. I think that's what I'm trying to say. You can just see the end of the street, can't you, as well? So just get that idea in there. And again, I've not actually picked out any details there. I've just gone with, you know, what happens at the bottom of houses. Well, they have some sort of lines and they have some window and door-like structures, but I haven't gone to great lengths to actually get it accurate. But it's effective enough, because without zooming in on this reference photo a huge amount, what can you really pick out? Same with these windows and things, these doors I'm drawing in here. Just have a little check and see approximately what's going on, and then just create these shapes and see what, you know, see how little essentially you can get away with to suggest what's going on, and still to have suggested enough that you are happy with what's going on. Because apart from the fact I give you guys all these reference images, whoever looks at this, if anyone ever looks at this again, whoever looks at it isn't going to know exactly what this street looked like. Even if you live on this street, you might only know this is the wrong number of windows because that's your house. I go up and down the street all the time, and I cannot tell you how many houses there are, let alone how many windows each one has. So I could tell you if it feels right, but I couldn't tell you if the details are right. Now if we get this base of this down as well, because this is a rather confusing bit of pavement, which you just need to be a little bit careful to get in, but it curves around like that. Just be wary of the perspective, because everything's opening out. What you want to make sure is that you've got your houses level. So this house and this house are the same distance away from me in that dimension. So the foot of them, the base of them, should be level. If I put my pen, they should be in the same place. So this corner should be here, and that should keep working as we go back. So you see how all the houses are on a level. There's lots of times where I've drawn one side of a street, then drawn the other without paying attention, and this side of the street somewhere up here, and this is down here, and then it's suddenly like, is this street on a giant slope, or what's going on? So it is worth just having a little concentrate, a little think when you get to drawing, especially your closer houses, because that's when it gets noticeable. And just double check that you've got the comparative measurements about right. We can pop in, I think, one more chimney, maybe two. I am enjoying actually the ability just to pop in these bold lines without having to block in is really interesting with this fude pen. I'll pop a link to it on my Amazon list, so you can find it. Again, like I have an Amazon list. I get commissioned if you ever buy something from there. I'm not sure how much, a very small amount, but I would suggest trying to buy things from elsewhere. I'm not a huge Amazon fan, but they do unfortunately have a very good way of me collating supplies. So have a look on there, buy it from there if you like, buy it from my link if you like, but also if you like going to independent shops, have a little look there if you want to play with something like this. Now we're kind of left thinking, how much more detail do we want to put in, right? And I think detail wise we've probably got plenty. What we can start doing is just popping in some of our shapes. So if we just get some of these curves, just being a bit more 3D, and then just get the idea of some road markings. So suddenly this road's not a big white expanse. And then I think I lost a bit of shape in this, and then I just realised this house doesn't have any windows yet. So if we just concentrate on just building shape where something just feels like it's not finished, just try and embolden something and get it to feel a bit more finished. Maybe add some roof textures, for example. This is where this mistake sort of disappears, as we just adding in some more interesting lines and colours. I say colours, it's not colours, is it? Textures. Okay, and then one of the most important things in any little sort of quaint street scene, apart from getting all your lampposts in, so there's another one here, is getting those lovely wires. I love just trying to capture those wires, which sort of string everywhere. What I find I need to do to get them about right is really look and just practice the stroke and think, where am I aiming and does it make sense? So there's one needs to come into the top of this house and just get that lovely sweep, and then from that we can get another coming into this house and this house, and then there's a couple which are just going a bit higher coming off the screen. I'm going to have to enlarge in my telephone, but that's fine. We'll try and get another couple coming from the same place. So if I get one in here, and then a couple more in here. Okay. So there we go, we've got plenty going on there now. Just had some of these little fun textures. You've got these, they're almost like handholds. I'm sure they're not handholds, because they don't want you to climb their poles. But just adding those little details, and then there's this nice tree here. And I think actually this would be a fun thing to do with this pen, because just like that sort of Japanese style of art, where you just suggest things with different boldnesses of ink. Yeah, look at that, that's a fun way of getting in a tree. So there you go, another use for this interesting pen. Okay, and I think that is probably the pen work done. And we've got loads of detail going on there. An interesting scene, very complicated, but really, when you think about it, what have we done? We've made some shapes, we've brought down some lines, just thinking about how wide those lines should be, and then we've just popped in suggestive details which aren't actually necessarily in the image. And then a lot of this complexity is coming from mistakes where I've ghosted. That adds complexity, but I've actually gone wrong, but it makes it look more authentic or more real. And then also these wires, just they're adding a lot of complexity, but they're nothing, they're little sweeps, and again I haven't really ended them in the right place. But looking at the image as a whole, that just doesn't matter. Now, how can we add some fun colour to this? So, I think, as always, I've just been cautious because I've not used this pen before, but it doesn't appear to be making, what's the word, spreading. The ink doesn't seem to be spreading, that'll do. Anyway, as always, lots of water in the sky. Get a few splashes of water going on as well. And then this is a kind of dusky picture, isn't it? So I've got this cerulean which is already leaked out in my palette, and that's a nice cool blue. What I probably want to do is add something a bit deeper to it. So if I add that cool blue and I add my Dantrone, or you might use an ultramarine, and we make it nice and watery. Keep mixing those two together, and then let's just start at the top and just see all that water. Do you see how this colour is just spreading? So we don't need to be clever at all, because the colour is going to do the job for us. And for me, it doesn't matter where you start. I love these cauliflowers, so if you want to avoid the cauliflowers, what you want to do is a smooth wash down. If you want to have fun and create some interesting textures, then move around the page and let the colours do what they want to do and see what happens. I did a little video a few weeks ago on how to make cauliflowers, so if you're interested in that kind of thing, feel free to check that out.
Now I'm just trying to find myself a nice warm colour here, but not being successful there. I think that yellow and the blue becomes a bit too green, so I'm going to try my transparent pyrrole orange. I'm going to just really water it down. It's because at dusk you get that lovely yellow glow just coming out the very bottom of the sky, and having that mixed together with my blue is something I'm really after. Picked up a bit of red there by accident, but never mind. Again, this just shows colours don't matter. It's all about the tone, the texture, the shape. I've used totally the wrong colour. I accidentally put a red in instead of an orange, but it's doing something unexpected and interesting. So, you know, I'm actually really happy that I made yet another mistake. But again, mistakes aren't a real thing. They can be sometimes, but normally mistakes aren't a real thing. They're just yourself being too harsh and not accepting a bit of randomness as a really necessary part of most people's processes. Just added a bit of water splashed in there to accentuate some of those cauliflowers to get some variation in those dense pigment areas. Now I'm going to start bringing that warmth down. So I'm going to mix my orange and red with that blue. So I've got a nice shadow colour, which is also a colour that I've been using. So it mixes all these colours together, and red and blue makes purple. So you end up with a nice deep colour that also reflects what's going on elsewhere. I'm going to give myself a little bit of sunlight down one side, which isn't really in the reference. And then on the other side I'm going to go much heavier on the blue to give us that sort of idea of deep shadows coming down. This is all expressive colour, isn't it? It's all representative, not reality. So we don't need to judge it too much either. I will now get some yellow because I want to just give this light something extra. So the idea of this light being here means we definitely need a bit of light going on at the top here as well. That can be bits of red to represent the brick, bits of yellow to represent both brick but also just sunlight. You can drop a bit of yellow in there. And where else do we want to add just a bit of interest here? Well, perhaps we want to get some of these oranges coming up the top as well, because the sunlight will be, if we're imagining the sunlight coming down, hitting here, it's going to be hitting these roofs. It's going to be hitting at the top here as well. So this roof as well. Maybe even make it quite intense as we get further away. We can bring this church to make it pop out. So suddenly these buildings are lifting away from the sky, but also bleeding into it. And let's just keep playing with the different sort of intensities of colour and water, seeing what happens. And as we keep moving around, bound to end up with something interesting. And as long as you keep it wet, so I'm not happy with that intensity of blue, but because it's nice and wet, just watch what happens. I can drop some orange in, and suddenly we've got a nice mix. We've not got something too standout. And to be honest, that's looking really interesting to my eyes. I'm just going to add a few splashes. So let's take this heavy indanthrone colour and just touch it into the sky and give that sort of blooming out effect, a bit of a lift. Then add a bit of the cerulean as well, so that it's not too intense. And then let's get some red. The red can bloom into the sky, but also come down. And that just unifies things. I think that's probably enough splashing. Not very much splashing for me, but I think that's enough. I like to get my chimneys. I often say I love my red chimneys, and almost always someone will comment and say, I love red chimneys too. So I'll say it again, I love red chimneys. So I'm going to just get some red on many of the chimneys and let that do its thing. And then maybe a little bit more shadow here. Just much gentler shadow because it's coming out. So our focal point's definitely in this area, isn't it? Sort of coming like this. So as we get further out, we want looser, less intense colour. And to be honest, I think that's done. So I'm just going to pop a signature there. Let it dry, and then I'll show you what it looks like in about probably 20 to 30 minutes, looking at the amount of water on that page. And here we are, nice and dry. I think the fude pen has been a success here. Gives you an interesting variety of lines you can use. You can create these lovely shapes and just bold areas really easily. But unlike a chisel pen, it's also very easy to keep it really fine. And I think the colours have worked really well as well. We've got these lovely cauliflowers and blooms everywhere. And the idea of this light flowing down the street as well. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please do like and subscribe. It will help to my little channel. And I hope to see you at the next video.